Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Martha May Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. I only read 3 books for most of the month, and then in the last week of the month I read 2. Also there's a fly in the room. There he is, my little fly guy. He's on the Lies of Loch Lamora. I hope you enjoy it. It's the sort of book a fly might like. I have to talk about books I've read now. The first book that I read in June was The Wolf in the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky. This is a historical fiction fantasy with elements of Norse and Inuit mythology. This book follows Omat, who is the shaman for his people, and he has the body of a girl / woman, because we follow Omat throughout his whole life, and he has his father's spirit born into him, because part of the Inuit culture that's spoken about in this is that the spirits are kind of recycled, so no one truly dies. Their spirit goes and lives with the stars for a bit, and then when a baby's born, the spirit enters the body of a child, and Omat gets his father's spirit. There's quite a lot in this book about gender and how Omat views his gender, how his people view his gender, and also how he's viewed by people outside of his community. So Omat's a shaman, which means there's actually quite a lot of trances in this book, and I don't normally like trances in books. I think it's because they're often written in a way that's meant to be confusing, so you're meant to be disoriented like a character is in a trance. But I don't like being confused and disoriented when I'm reading books. I like to know what's going on. But the trances in this were done really well, where I wasn't confused and it didn't annoy me. I also really liked learning about the mythology of both of the cultures that are explored in this book. So like I said, there's Norse mythology and Inuit mythology, because later on in the book Omat meets a Viking, and there's a lot explored about the different gods that both cultures have. I rated this book 4 stars. The only thing that I didn't love about this book was that at the end of each chapter, almost every chapter, there was a sentence that said, "And that was the last time I was happy for as long as I can remember," or "That was the last time my brother and I were getting on," or whatever the sentence said, which I think was meant to inspire me to want to read the next chapter to find out what went wrong for the characters. But what it actually did was it made me not want to read on, because I was reading a happy chapter where Omat and his brother go like fishing for seals. What do you call— oh, hunting for seals. You don't fish for a seal, they're not fish. Then Omat's like, "And that's where it all went wrong." Well, I don't want to read about where it all went wrong. So actually it discouraged me from reading on. The second book that I read in June was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. The fly's back. Get away. This is a historical fiction with speculative fiction elements. You could also call it a sci-fi because it involves time travel, but it isn't scientific time travel, which is why I don't know if it's sci-fi, because there's no science. It just happens. This book follows Dana, who is a black woman from the 1970s who involuntarily time travels to 1815, where she encounters a white boy who's drowning. She saves his life, and she continues to save his life throughout the book. Basically, every time this boy, Rufus, gets himself into trouble that could mean he's going to die, Dana is summoned from the 70s back to the 1800s throughout Rufus's life to save him. And because Dana is a black woman in the 1800s, she is assumed to be a slave every time she travels back to the 1800s. I loved this book. I really loved seeing a perspective of time travel where it isn't all fun and games. Oh, look at me, white Englishman, I've built my time machine and off I go. It's from the point of view of someone who definitely doesn't want to time travel to this time period. And there are a lot of groups of people where there are lots of time periods throughout history that they wouldn't want to time travel to. So it was really good to see that perspective. For such a short book, it had a massive impact on me, but it also, the story has a massive impact on all of the characters. I felt so connected to all of the characters by the end. I've seen in quite a few reviews that this reads like a memoir of someone who has been a slave, and I found that to be true as well. It was very realistic, seeing Dana's reaction to the world that she is thrown into, and also her husband's reaction, because her husband's white, and when she comes back she tells him everything that's been going on, and seeing his reaction to the time period as well was really interesting. I don't have anything bad to say about this book. Normally I go into the pros and cons of the book, but I think that I've given you enough to hopefully inspire you to pick it up. I didn't have any cons for this book, so I can't go into them because there weren't any for me. If it sounds like something that might interest you, please do read it, and I rated it 5 stars. The third book that I read in June was Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. So this is the Puffin in Bloom edition. I think everyone's seen it. If you haven't, take a look at her. The fly's about again. Now it's reading the history of the world. Get your education, fly. I think most people know Anne of Green Gables is about, but it's about Anne, who is an orphan, and she's adopted by Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert because they want a boy to help on their farm, and Anne turns up instead, and she's got an amazing imagination and she loves telling stories and big words. She ends up being able to stay at Matthew and Marilla's farm, Green Gables. This is one of the books that when I was younger I considered one of my favourite books, even though I hadn't read it, because I just knew that this book had the kind of feeling of a book that I would like. Recently I was inspired to pick it up because I bought the whole Puffin in Bloom collection, and I really enjoyed the first series of Anne with an E. I haven't watched any of the other ones. I don't know why, but I just can't get into the other ones, but I enjoyed the first series. So I really loved this book. I really liked hearing all of Anne's musings about nature and the imaginative world she comes up with her best friend, and all of the mischief that she gets into that has fairly small consequences, and I just thought it was quite a nice little book. Anne grows up quite fast in this book. I think it's around 400 pages? Yeah, it's 420 pages, and Anne goes from being 11 to 15 within the book. And I got so emotional when she was 15 because all of a sudden she was grown up and she was taking exams to go off to like a teaching school, I think it is. I'm not really sure. I rated it 5 stars. I know that there is kind of a continuing series of Anne and her adventures. I don't know if I'll read it. If you have read them, let me know what you recommend doing, because I don't want to spoil my love of this one. I did a sneaky early start to my e-readathon challenge that I set myself for July, which was to read only ebooks for all of July. I already know it's not going to happen because I've already read 2 ebooks and I'm now in a slump because all I want to read is literally any physical copy of a book. Even if I didn't like it, I see a book that I didn't like and I'm like, sign me up, let me read that instead of reading books that I'm excited for but on a screen. So that's fun. Fourth book that I read in June was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. I spoke about this in my announcement for my challenge. This book follows Imoni, who wants to be a chef. She's got a 2-year-old daughter and she's in high school and she's weighing up what her future will be. I don't know what year you call it in America because in case you can tell, I'm not American. So I don't know what year you call it, but it's the year that everyone leaves high school. And she's in that year and she's trying to figure out what she's gonna do with her future. But because she has a daughter, and also because she's a really good mum, all of her decisions first kind of go through, her daughter's called Emma, and they kind of go through the Emma filter. I really liked reading about Imoni's dedication to her daughter in this book. I thought it was so cute. I also loved reading about her relationships in this book. I loved reading about Imoni's relationship with her grandmother and also her relationship with her best friend. I also loved Malachi in this. So Malachi is a new boy that joins Imoni's, I think they call it homeroom in America. In England we call it a form. He kind of joins the class that you have at the start of school where you say, here. The only people I did not like in this book, well I say the only people, there are a few people I didn't like in this book. I don't like the chef. I've spoken about this before. He's not as creepy as I thought he was when I announced I was reading this book. The comments that he makes about Hermione early on in the book don't come to anything like I thought that they would. Initially wasn't a big fan of Tyrone, who is Emma's dad, so Imoni's ex-boyfriend, and I also really didn't like Tyrone's mum. I also said this in my announcement for my e-readathon that I didn't love the food description in this. I don't really like food description in any books. I've spoken about it. It creeps me out. It continued to bother me, but that isn't the book's fault because I chose to read a book knowing that it was about food and a character that wants to be a chef. So it's not the book's fault. And it didn't overshadow the plot for me too much. So I overall rated this book 4 stars. Finally, I read The Fascinators by Andrew Eliopoulos. Again, I read this as an ebook for my e-reading challenge. This follows Sam, who, like Amoni, is in his final year of high school and he is trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. He's in a magic club called The Fascinators. Oh, the title's included in the book. And his best friends are also in that club, Delia and James. They're the only members of the club because they're bad at advertising. In Sam's world, every human has magic and it's something you can't live without, but a lot of people choose not to practice magic for fun and will only use it in worship or won't use it at all, especially where Sam lives in Georgia. Everyone's quite religious and they view magic as blasphemy. As well as following Sam, James and Delia in their magic club, there's also some cult elements to this, which I did not know and I really enjoyed. The writing and the plot in The Fascinators, to me, felt like the writing and plot in one of my favourite book series from when I was around 11. This one. If you're reading this, It's Too Late by Pseudonymous Bush. I think this is the sequel, but it follows a girl who gets involved in like suspicious culty things that are happening in her town. And it's similar in The Fascinators, so I just wanted to mention it. So it's a similar writing and a similar plot, kind of an adventure story for children, but it does have YA elements like alcohol and drug abuse, and I think that's swearing, but I can't remember. So I don't mean that the writing and the plot are like from a children's book as an insult. I don't mean that at all. It's just that it was quite simple and pacey and interesting. So it's third person, but kind of sympathetic to Sam's point of view. So he'll be in an argument and someone will make a point and that Sam's about to reply to, and then in the actual writing he'll say, which, okay, as though Sam's considering the point. So it's not from Sam's point of view, but it's very sympathetic to the way that he thinks and speaks. So there were a few moments that took me out of the story a little bit. For example, Sam is showing Denver another very nice new boy in town, just like in With the Fire on High and Malachi, but Sam's showing Denver to his room and Sam makes a joke and says, oh, this is where the magic happens, which is like obviously a double joke because actual magic happens there. But I wondered whether if humans have had magic forever, whether that is a joke. Like, would this is where the magic happens even still be a phrase? Because people have actual magic. So I don't know. And the other point that was quite similar to this was that in the community that Sam lives in, not a lot of people practice magic because they see it to be blasphemous because of their religion. But I'm wondering, would religion even be the same? So where Sam lives, there's a lot of Christian people and they hate magic and they're quite homophobic as well. And Sam's gay and has a crush on his friend James, so Sam kind of gets hate from them on 2 counts. But I just wonder whether religion would be the same in a world where there's magic. I just wanted to see more how humans having magic for all of human history impacted humans now. Despite that, I did really enjoy the story. I liked the characters. I rated it 3 stars. So those were all of the books that I read in June. If you've read any of these, please let me know in the comments down below what you thought of them. If you like this video and would like to see more videos like this from me, then please do subscribe to my channel and I'll see you in my next video.